Also on the call with us today, we have the fantastic Monique, who is on our team. Many of you know her. She's a customer success manager and probably helps you with your account as needs arise. And Monique will be doing the job of sort of monitoring the chat and either answering questions that come up directly in the chat, or if it's something that's worthy of a quick diversion and talking about live, she'll shout at me and I'll shut up for a minute and she'll direct my attention to that. But in the meantime, again, I want to thank everybody for being here. The release of this terms functionality has been a labor intensive, but a labor of love for the last year and a half. And I couldn't be more excited about A, the fact that we released something really cool and unique, and B, the feedback we've gotten from you guys has been really positive so far. So really excited to share this with you all. I'm not going to touch on a whole lot of ground that wasn't covered in the video that was sent out with the announcement, but hopefully we can go through it at a slower pace here, answer questions as they come up, and just make sure everyone has an opportunity to truly understand how the terms functionality works. And I'd like to start by, instead of jumping straight into the product, I'd like to start by sort of setting an agenda here and going through a couple of terminologies so that we're sure we're all talking about the same thing, right? The word term in the English language can carry a lot of meanings, and so I want to make sure that we're all aligned on what we're talking about, what the problem we're trying to solve is, and so on. So we're going to start by saying, what do we mean by terms? And then understand how it overlaps with another concept within Engagifii of positions. And then we're going to jump into a demo and use the product and kind of walk around and show you stuff. And that's probably where a whole lot of questions are going to come up. And that's, again, totally fine. Please type them in and let's have a dialogue, not a monologue. And then finally, we'll start with a couple of logistic steps. If you're thinking that this is totally relevant to your organization, then I'll show you where to go to turn stuff on for yourself if it isn't already. Or if you feel wary about that at all, then no problem. We'll be reaching out to everyone after the fact and offering assistance as needed to get terms enabled in your workspaces. So what do we mean by terms? I'm going to use the familiar example that I imagine we all have rattling around in our head of the White House, right? The presidency. So here I have a timeline of all the presidents since Clinton. And you can see that, we have 3 back-to-back 2-term presidents and now 2 back-to-back 1-term presidents. And then if we, for example, were to have Trump win again, then we would have a 2-term president with 2 non-consecutive terms, right? So you can see how this will build itself forward. But when we say terms, we're talking about that 92 to 96, 96 to 2000, 2000 to 2004. Each of those is a 4-year term for the presidency. Some folks serve multiple terms. And you can map that onto county commissioners. You can map that onto mayors. You can map that onto school board members. All of those people might serve 2 or 4 or 6-year terms, like a senator, for example. All kinds of different lengths of terms. You can also start thinking about things like Supreme Court justices. If you've got any form of this in your world, someone who's akin to a Supreme Court justice, and that they've got this flexible start date. They start whenever the Senate confirms them, and then they serve for an indeterminate amount of time. It's not a set 2, 4, or 6 years. It's a lifetime service term. So be thinking about those sorts of things. Now, when we're talking about the terms that someone's serving, they're serving that term in a specific job. So if we think about Clinton, Gore, Madeleine Albright, or Bush, Cheney, Colin Powell, these are 3 people who all served in these positions from 92 to 2000 and 2000 to 2008. And I know that there was different secretaries of states, simplicity. But Clinton and Bush served in those positions as president, right? Their position was president. The scenario that put them into that position was an election. Same thing for the vice president. Gore and Cheney were elected into their positions of vice president. So the terminology means a lot, right? Within Engagifii, we have this concept of a position. Every record has one. My position is board member within the Department of School Board. My position is president within the Department of U.S. government, federal government. Well, what about the Secretary of State? Does anyone remember casting a vote for Madeleine Albright or for Condoleezza Rice? Right? None of us did, right? The president appointed that person into that position. So it's still serving in the same term, but as an appointed person, not an elected person. Same thing with the Supreme Court justice. A Supreme Court justice is not elected into their position, they're appointed into their position. So within each of your organizations, you have some combinations of these things where I've got people of different types who serve in different positions into which they are either elected or appointed. And then other people who serve in other positions that are simply hired. And so it's really important to talk about termed versus untermed, standard, regular employment. And to use some examples here, the president we were just talking about, or a school board member. I see PSBA in the house. We just talked about GSBA. I think I see Florida in the house. What's up? A mayor, a secretary of state. These are all termed people who are either elected or appointed into their positions. And that might change over time. You know, John's here from PSBA, and he's educated me on Pennsylvania's school board process, where a person can be appointed first and then elected into a school board seat. And so I know that there's a lot of variability even within a given position, and we've built to sort of accommodate all of that. And then you've got untermed people, right? The janitor, a school superintendent, a county clerk, department directors, translators, all these other jobs that happen that are never on a ballot, but are appointed, or I'm sorry, not even appointed, that are hired for within their organizations. Those are the sort of two different general buckets of people that you're probably tracking when you think about how they came to serve in their positions. So if we think about how that term and position map out over time, a couple of key nuances start to come up. And for this, I'm going to borrow Barack Obama. If we were to look at his LinkedIn, it would show a complete 8-year Illinois state senator term before he went to the US Senate and served a partial term before winning the election in 2008 to become the president for 2 terms. So why do I bring this up? Well, you might have multiple positions mapped to the same term, in that a congressman is serving the same 4 years as a president, just in a different position. It's the same 4 years. You might have some positions that have different durations, like Illinois State Senate versus US Senator. You might be tracking both of those people in your database, and one of them's an 8-year term, one of them's a 6-year term. You might also have non-consecutive, like I mentioned. There are 2 examples of this in US history where a president has been president, lost, and come back. And Donald Trump could be a third if it were to happen. So non-consecutive terms, that's something that happens all the time in public service, especially in the school board world, which has come up a couple times here, but also elsewhere. Mayors sometimes come, leave, come back, and all kinds of positions. So I want to make sure that this concept of relationships and the relationship between terms and positions makes sense. Have I lost anybody entirely yet? Are there any questions on that before we hop into the demo? It'll be more illustrated in the demo, of course, but is anyone's brain frying and want to ask a question? I see a question here about Florida superintendents. Yeah, so I know this is another thing. County clerks are the same way in some states. Sometimes superintendents are elected, sometimes they're simply hired. Sometimes county clerks are elected, sometimes they're simply hired. And so whenever you're configuring your database, and you'll see how we do this in a moment, you're going to determine which positions would be relevant to that term. So with that said, good question, Andrea. Thank you for that. Got a lot of AI assistant stuff here. That looks like all the written questions. So let's jump in and look at the product and kind of see how all this stuff works in practical everyday application. Okay. So I'm logged into Engagifii and I'm just looking at my people list. And you can see here that I've got a bunch of people here, some of whom are serving in elected positions and some are not. The way I've got my columns laid out, which of course you might lay yours out differently. Of course, if you go to your wrench, you can turn on and off and rearrange columns over here. The way that I've got mine turned on, I can see which position the person's currently in and which terms they've served in over here. So I know that Jennifer Aniston, for a school district, is a board member and is serving in the 20 to 24 term. I can see that Ed Mitchell for Blount County has served in 3 positions that I know of so far and has 4 terms. So I'm going to jump into Ed here as our first example that we might dig into and start by saying, well, what's his entire service history? What's the equivalent of that Barack Obama slide where we saw his entire sort of LinkedIn history? So I'm going to click on this term history button over here. And here's that full breakdown. So I can see that from 12 to 16, 16 to 20, 20 to 24, 24 to 28, he served these 4-year terms consistently, consecutively in Blount County. These are all past served terms, past tense, and this is his current active term. Now, had this been a person who moved from county to county, city to city, what have you, this might be, Nashville County, and this one might be Oklahoma County, and this might be, Blount County twice, whatever the case may be. Whatever his elected positions or appointed, his termed positions were over time, are all going to be captured into one cohesive view right here that I can see on any given person's record. Of course, if a person doesn't have a term history, if all they've got is hired history, then we won't see anything there. Now down here, I can sort of see the same information in an additional way, but not specifically, not only the termed information. I can see here that he has a current position as a county mayor where he's been, this is kind of a bad example actually, but for 29 years and 6 months, we've been tracking this guy as part of this law firm. That's not a good position. Whereas he's actually a partner, right? He's in the leadership team as an attorney, a hired position. No one's electing or appointing an attorney. They might an attorney general, but not an attorney, not a practicing lawyer. Down here at Blount County, I can see that's my primary relationship with him, and his current position at Blount County involving these 4 terms is that of an elected county mayor. And then before that, I had him as part of the county staff, the transportation director. And then maybe I had more before that, right? Just like LinkedIn, I can go as long as I want. And then up at the top, I can have a summary, or I have a summary of all of the time worked that I'm tracking for this person, so almost 30 years. And of that time, how much of it is served in termed positions? Okay. I'm going to go into edit mode here real fast. And actually, I'm going to delete that bad one we don't want in there. So I've removed that position from this person's profile. And I want to distinguish real quickly the terms dates versus the position dates. Now, the presidency has been our example all along, right? So President Kennedy gets sworn into office on January 19th, right? And that term runs from the 19th to, or I guess, what is it? The 20th to the 19th, right? Over a 4-year period, January to January. But President Kennedy got assassinated, which means President Johnson took over for him. And so his position as president started after the term had already started. Kennedy began the term, Johnson finished the term. In the same way, you'll have people who enter into a seat off cycle. Not everyone will be there because the election just happened yesterday. As such, whenever you're managing someone's position, you have the idea of a start date for that position. Now, in my examples, which is simple here, someone's starting on January 1st, 2012, which will correspond with my 2012 to 2016 term over here, right? But if this is one of those Kennedy-Johnson sort of examples, if someone dies while in office and gets replaced, if someone gets impeached out of office, if something weird happens and they leave office and they're replaced by someone else mid-cycle, then when you're selecting that they're going into a term, you don't have to select the starting date that term began. They might have started a 3-year term or a 4-year term 3 years into it, okay? So think about your start dates as independent from the term dates. People might serve partial terms by either joining late or ending early. Any questions on that so far? I'm just going to pull the chat back up. I lost the chat. Andrew, that's awesome to hear. Thank you. Now, another point to make while we're here is that a person might be serving, and I don't know if I have a great example of this off the top of my head, and maybe someone could throw one out there, but right now, one of the powers of Engagifii is it allows you, like with Ed here, to track a single record without duplicating that record, but have a person tied to multiple organizations. So without having to have 2 Ed Mitchell records out there, I have 2 different organizational relationships, right? The law firm, he's an attorney, and the county, where he's a county mayor. So I've got those 2 things happening without a duplicate record. One of those is elected, one of them's not, but they could easily both be elected. If he were somehow a county mayor of 2, I don't know. But maybe someone's elected to one position and appointed to another position within the same organization. or across 2 different organizations or 5 different organizations. There's a lot of flexibility there. And I wanted to make sure everyone was comfortable with that. And I'd love to hear it if there is an example of someone who might be serving elected and appointed positions across multiple organizations at the same time. I'd love to hear the example because as we continue to build new functionality for terms, I always want to try to build it off of real world use cases and not hypotheticals. So I'm going to go back to Blount County now, into the organization itself, and go to the People tab. When we were on the All People list, right, we were looking at everybody across the entire database. Now I'm specifically looking at everyone within Blount County. So within Blount County, I can see that I've got Ed Mitchell, whose record we were just on, county mayor, 4 terms. I can see that I've got a clerk, no terms. It's not a termed position, is it? Notice how termed is called out on any termed position. Tom Jones is our sheriff, but hold on, he's not an elected sheriff. We might want to fix that. Maybe sheriff should be an elected term. Oh, thanks, Andrea. Let's see, you've got an example there. I could have a school board member elected to a school district using Engagifii, but that person could be appointed to a committee leadership position in my organization. Absolutely. And so you've got the position they serve within their organization, and then they might also serve additional positions within your organization. So you could use departments, positions, and organizations to do that. We also have a committees feature specifically for tracking that. So Andrea, before we use terms for that, let's please make sure that we visit with you and talk about how you can use committees and have committee positions like chairperson, vice chair, treasurer, member, and so on, and track committee population history as well. It's a related feature, but not quite the same thing. So back here, Tom Jones is a sheriff. Tommy Lee Jones, by the way, is a sheriff, but has no term. I was at the ACCG conference a couple of years ago, and I remember during their big legislative meeting, one of the things that was coming up here in Georgia was the idea of whether coroners should be elected or not. I found that to be a fascinating question. It's one of the things that was a driving factor as we were building out the strategy for this new functionality, was that a position might have used to be untermed and now is termed. So let's play with that a little bit. Let's say Tom Jones, I'm going to go into his record, has been serving as the sheriff since 2018, but that's been a hired position. But coming up in the near future, there's been new legislation passed that means that now going forward, sheriffs will be an elected position. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to my terms area where I've got all of my terms. And these are just the containers. And of course, I can go look and see who's in a given term. I can click on it. I can click here and go into the detailed list. If someone's getting removed from office, let's say Thomas Lloyd just got impeached, I can end his position as of whatever date. Or if it's election cycle and someone just got defeated, I can end their positions in here as well. It's all kinds of stuff. We'll get back to that. But what I want to do now is say, we want to make sheriff for all future terms. So the 24 to 28 is the next one. All future terms, we want sheriffs to be an elected position. So all I'm going to do is go into 24 to 28, and I'm going to edit the details of this term, and I'm going to make sure that sheriff is now a position that going forward is termed. Now what that means is if I go add a new sheriff, then now when I choose sheriff as a position, then it'll ask me, hey, should they be marked to a term as well? And if so, it's a fixed date, and it starts this date to this date. Right on? So I know now that I've got sheriffs set up appropriately so that going forward, that change in legislation, that change in the way we do business in our state has been addressed. So the point to make there is that there's a lot of flexibility to map more positions to terms as the legislation changes. You don't have to do all the thinking up front. You don't have to do any forecasting. You map it to what your current reality is. You create the terms that you need today, that you know you need today. But then as the rules change down the road, you can always add more. You can always do different things to add more options there. So now if I go back to my organizations and I pull up Blount, I guess I could have just gone to Tommy's record, but let's go into Tommy now. And let's pretend for a moment that we were just adding him for the first time. So I'm going to delete this position entirely, and I'm going to add a new one, right? So for Blount County, I already have done, I'm sorry. I'm going to add a position for Blount County, and within, you know, law enforcement, whatever department I want to choose, right? I'm going to call it leadership. If I choose sheriff, now notice how sheriff has a termed flag on it. He was elected into that. And notice how 24 to 28 is the only term that I could map him to. I can't accidentally map him to 2012 to 2016 because it wasn't an elected position at that point. So there, and then I could choose which region. Now, this is an important little nuance here that we should take a moment to talk about. We've connected regions to terms because, you know, folks have different ways of doing regions in lots of different ways. So it might be within a region, you've got subregions, might be a Northeast, Southwest, simple thing like this. And it might be that someone has been a school board member in the North region and then is later a school board member in the South region, right? So we wanted to make sure you had the flexibility to not only map them to the organization, but also a region. You might have regions within the organization, especially if you're dealing with municipalities or states, where you might have a sub-region. The region is sub to the organization itself. So I'm going to say North, and what did we have him starting in 2016? I think it was. So I'm gonna backdate his start date to January 1st of 2016 and hit done. And I'm going to make sure that Blount County is my primary organization for him and hit save. But now I have him mapped as a person who's been a mayor since 2016, but hasn't started serving terms until 2024. Is it pronounced Blunt? Okay, someone just told me someone just corrected me that Blount is pronounced Blunt. So sorry about it. It's got extra letters in it. If it's supposed to be pronounced Blunt, they should really remove the O. Okay, let's continue on. So I'm going to go back to the terms tab here. And now I'm going to pull up 24 to 28, and we should see Tommy in here, right? So here's Tommy Lee Jones serving as our sheriff for Blount County, and as well as everyone else who's serving terms there as well. Now let's say we're coming up on election time, and we want to create a new term to house people for the next term, right? Now, you can see here that I've already forecasted ahead quite a bit. Let's delete a term that I'm not using or that I created by mistake, that kind of stuff. Or let's say it's 2032 right now, it's about to be 2033, and I need to create my next term, my next container to put people in because I'm about to get the election results and I need to update everything. So I can do this a couple different ways. I can duplicate an original term, change its dates. So this would be, you know, 2033, what did I have? 2032 to 2036, right? January 1st. And notice how that's gone straight to the end of 2035 in preparation for the 36 to 40 term. I'm going to give it a new name, 2032 to 2036. Everything else is carried over. It's fixed dates. It's 4 years. It's all the same positions. Maybe I want to add sheriff to it, right? Or maybe there's something else that has changed and I need to make that update for this upcoming term. I can even choose to copy over all of the people who I'm copying from. So if you're in a situation where you have a lot of carryover, a lot of retention, you might choose to do this and then just remove the people who lost their seats. Or you might choose not to do this and just start from scratch. Just have the container and go add people to the term as you see fit. I'm going to go ahead and copy the people over. But while we're at it, let's go ahead and create a fresh term. We'll forecast a little bit further into the future, 36 to 40. But this one I'm going to create from scratch. That way we can talk through all the various levers you can pull. Okay, so as I'm creating a new term, 2036 to 2040, let's talk real quickly about duration types. Now, I mentioned the Supreme Court earlier as an example. The Supreme Court has flexible term dates, meaning there is no set moment that a Supreme Court justice is expected to be nominated and confirmed. They get nominated in January, they get confirmed sometime in February, and that's when they start. And then when they start that, they now serve a lifetime term. So notice that as I started clicking that stuff, things started disappearing. Because it's a lifetime term, there is no duration. Because it's a flexible term, And if it's a flexible 36-month term, for example, right, then it doesn't matter when I start, I have 3 years. Or I guess I could simplify that and say 3 years, right? 3 years from whenever I get put in my seat. I don't know of a lot of examples out there in association land, but you have that flexibility. Where I expect this to mostly be used, especially for our more judicial legal associations, is probably for tracking judges who serve lifetime terms. But you know, the flexibility, the functionality is all there. What I think is most common in this room is going to be fixed terms, like the examples that I've been laying out so far. A 4-year term, and it might be weeks, months, years, that starts on a given day. So I'm going to go forecast to 2036 here. We're going way in the future. January 1st, 2036 through January 1st. Oh, that was messed up. That's supposed to be December 1st, December 31st, 2039, right? Yeah, 2039. So that's what we want. And then the positions, I might select different ones here. So let's just say for a moment, I only want board members and board secretaries in this term. Maybe it's some sort of specialist term that's only for a very specific couple of folks. And maybe they're only people who are appointed. I want to segregate out entirely my appointed people from my elected people. So these are all things when you're creating a term that you might choose to configure different ways. And also, you'll note that none of the terms that I have are overlapping. You very well may have overlapping terms. I'll pick on John again from PSBA. I know I'm going to butcher this, John, but if I remember correctly, at any given time, PSBA, or Pennsylvania School Boards Association, has 3 consecutive terms happening at any given moment. Is that right, John? Am I remembering that correctly?
Correct. Yeah, we'd have the appointed term, so anyone starting at any given time. And then we'd have the 4-year term, and then individuals can run for a 2-year term if the term is broken by someone leaving for really any reason. Yeah.
Yeah. So it can be a little bit confusing until you dig into it. John knows it by heart because he lives it. But you know, every 2 years there's an election, and the people that are winning those elections are beginning either a 2 or a 4-year term, which always results in 3 consecutive terms happening at the same time. And so while mine is nice and cut and dry, yours might not be, and that's okay. All the flexibility is there. Here's my appointed term. Here's my elected term. Here's a term that combines them. You know, however you wanted to roll, and whatever level of complexity you need, you can absolutely do that. Kim, you had a question here about, let's see, each county has a different district for which school board members run. Can regions be customized to delineate districts? Yeah, effectively. We probably want to dig into this in a little more detail to make sure I understand. But if I'm understanding you correctly, for sure, the district is the organization. The regions can be whatever subset you want. I chose something easy like Northeast, Southwest. It could be, you know, District 1, District 2, District 3, kind of like an electoral map. Think about Nebraska, or what is it, Maine, on the electoral map, how it's broken out into districts within the state. You might break out into districts within the district, as it were. Okay, so moving on. Let's see here. We've created a term, we've duplicated a term, we've discussed all those different levers you can pull. Okay. So now an election has happened. You've created a new term to contain them. Maybe you've copied everybody over. Let's talk about a couple of different ways of sort of acting on your election results and keeping your database up to date. Now, I'll say that we've heard different answers to this question, right? I'll ask our clients from time to time, how much do you like your members to do for you versus how much do you keep within your 4 walls and manage yourself? And there's varying degrees of flexibility and appetite there for a federating of responsibility, a delegation of responsibility out to folks like, you know, county clerks, school board secretaries, so on, admins within the mayor's office, all that stuff to do work on behalf of the association to maintain their member records, right? You can totally imagine in a school board world where it would be desirable to have a board secretary go in and update all the records for the members within that school district. Same thing for the elected people within a city administration if you're a municipal association. Same thing in a county government if you're a county association, and so on. And so we've tried to come up with a couple of clever ways for you to be able to efficiently and effectively either do this work yourself or farm it out to be done. Either way, the functionality is basically the same. Let's say that we just did our 2032 election, right? and I'm populating this list, and I've already carried over everybody, but Mike here didn't win his reelection. So I can click on Mike, I can end his position as of whatever date he's going to leave office. So if this term begins January 1st of 2032, then I'm going to set this to end, on December 31st of 2031, right? And then later I'm going to create a new person who's going to take over the new seat, all right? Take over that seat that's now going to be vacant. The beautiful thing about this is I can just go top to bottom and update these one by one if I want. And I know some of you have thousands of people. I'm going to get to that in a moment, but I can update this one by one, and just, kind of go top to bottom. I can search by organization and say, I want to do everybody in Carson now, or I can, sort by various things. I can do all kinds of different ways of attacking this one by one. I can even group this by organization if I wanted to see how many people in this term are serving in a given organization. Or you could take the time and import them. So we already prepare and provide an import template that looks something like this. And I won't go through an actual import here, but you've got your Secretary of State results over here, your election results, and you copy out the email addresses of all the people that need to be in the new term, what position they're going to be serving in that term, their organization. You fill out these basic columns, and then you upload it to your computer right here, and boom, the new term is populated. You still would want to go through and remove the people who lost. But as far as mass adding, that is a really quick and easy way to do it. So for those of you who have a lot of turnover, I think I was in Kentucky recently, if I remember correctly. I was in Kentucky, and Keiko told me that they have something like a 60% turnover in county elected officials sometimes. And I was like, whoa. And that's one of the things that made me realize we really, really, really need a mass import here. Beth, that's a great question. We are working on, so Beth's question is vacant seats. Something in I appreciate that question, Beth. It's really consistent. ACCG has asked for this for some time, and man, I've got a really crisp idea on how we're going to do it. This is foundational to it, but basically there's a certain, if you think about a committee as an example here, a committee might have a president, a vice president, and say 6 voting positions and a treasurer, right? There are these seats that can be filled with people. Well, county governments, city governments, even school boards can often be the same way. And so Engagifii is built around this concept of here's everybody that we know of that exists. And I go to Blount County and I look at their people list, and I can see all the people that are there. Something ACCG has asked for, so when you get this, everybody, you can send your thank you card to ACCG, is the ability to see the vacancies within the organization. So I've done a lot of strategy on this, Beth. It's not the same thing here, but it will be overlapped when we build that, with you guys very much in mind. Okay, so I can add people en masse. I can remove people individually. If I'm adding a new person, like we were messing around with an existing person, Tom, earlier. But if I'm adding a new person, then it's the same story. Whenever I go add a new member or any person of any position, any type, that is an elected position, the second I choose the elected position, when I'm adding that new person, it's going to ask me those same questions. So you're adding people, you're removing people, you're ending people's positions and all that stuff. And every time you add a new person, hey, should they be in a term? Every time you're removing someone, did you mean to remove them from the term entirely, like that was a mistake, or did you mean to just end their position, meaning they did serve, but they're now no longer serving? So going back into our organization here, this is how we envision that either you as a staff or you could federate out to your member administrators, right? Your county clerks, your school board secretaries, and so on, to do work on your behalf, is that within their controlled ecosystem of looking at their organization, or again, same thing if you're a staff member of the association, I can come here and I can say, show me everybody who's currently serving in terms in this list of county staff members, right? And I've only got 2 in this example, so I'm going to expand that out again. But for everybody who's serving in terms, I can end their position, remove them from the term, or remove them from the position entirely. So let's talk about the nuance there. There's a bit of a difference there, right? What do I mean by these things? Removing from a position means I have Tom in here as a sheriff. That was a mistake. He never served as sheriff. It's just an error, and they're going to happen. And so what I want to do is remove him from the position of sheriff, meaning he'll never have shown as sheriff, because I meant to put deputy sheriff, right? I could also just go to his record and update the position, but why when I can do it from right here by managing his position? I can simply change it here as well. So there's a difference between removing it and managing it, right? So, but I don't have to go to Tom's record like we did earlier to do this. I don't have to go to Ed's record. I can manage all of these people's positions directly from here. Similarly, removing from a term is different from ending someone's term. So removal from a term implies that I made a mistake. We had 2 Dean Martins, we had 2 Tom Jones, 2 Elvis Presleys, and I accidentally added the Elvis Presley who's a clerk to a term when I meant to add the Elvis Presley who's a county commissioner to a term. So I'm going to go in and remove, oops, I guess the Elvis is a bad example. I'm going to go in and remove the term, right? And then go to the right person and add the term back. As opposed to end position, which you saw me do a moment ago back in the terms detail. This person has lost re-election. I still want to show that they served a couple of terms. I'm not saying they never served in this position. I am saying that they're retiring, have died, have been impeached, they're leaving office. And so I'm forecasting some future date that they will leave. So let's go back to our presidency. The election happens in November, and we're going to find out in November whether Kamala Harris or Donald Trump is our next president. When that happens, we can go in and add a new record and forecast a start date for one of those 2 people. Now, Donald would already have a record. Kamala, well, she'd probably have a record too, because she would have been a senator and a vice president. But I'll go to those records and I'll update their positions depending on who got the job, right? But for Biden today, I know that Biden is going to stop being president on January 19th. So I can go ahead and forecast that, and it's done. That bit of clerical work is over. I have made my update. And so I can, as soon as I know someone's going to leave office, I can forecast it. Instead of having to set a reminder and go back and manage it on the day, I can just have it set right away. So any questions there between, this is one area where I'm concerned that we haven't perfectly nailed it, and that there might be some confusion and conflation between removal, ending, and managing. Are there any questions on that you'd like to ask, or any clarifications that need to be made? Because I want to learn from it, and as we continuously iterate on Engagifii, make little tweaks where things might not have totally nailed it. Any questions or thoughts on all that? No? Cool. Sounds like it's perfect then. Perfect product, Ben. Well done. I'm excited. That's amazing. So pretty easy though, right? Go organization by organization, either within the term itself or here within the organization itself. And if you're a board secretary, all you can see is your organization. So you send out a post-election note saying, hey, board secretaries, county clerks, city administrators, go through and update your roster for me, please. And then they go through and they do their management, they do their ending, and so on. Some of this you can also do en masse. So I'm going to pick the 2 termed people here that are serving current terms and go to my wrench. And you notice here as well, I can end both of their positions at the same time, remove them from their positions at the same time, or remove them from a term at the same time. So if you're looking at election results and there was a cleaning of house, then I can end the position from here for all of these people at the same time, right? So I can say, as of January 19th, for everybody, go ahead and end their positions. And it will just forecast them all. So if you do have several people within one organization, one member organization, who have ended their, who are going to be ending their tenure, then you can work en masse in that way as well. Again, organization by organization. Okay, believe it or not, that's terms. Now I'd like to turn forward real quickly. I'm going to do 2 things. Number one, I'm going to put a poll up on the screen that's just going to ask a couple of basic questions about this functionality and your perception of it, whether it is feeling useful, whether you'd like help from us in putting it together, within your organization, whether you need a follow-up, all that stuff. So please take a few minutes, or it shouldn't take more than 1 or 2 minutes here to fill that out. But while that's happening, what I'm going to do is jump under the hood real quickly here and show you how, for the administrators out there among you, show you how to enable this for your team. So all of you who are using Engagify and are administrators already know what roles are, right? These are your permission sets. This is what enables your various types of users, your staff, junior and senior, yourself as an administrator, your your actual members, what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. So in my example here, we've been talking about county clerks. We've been talking about city admins, school board secretaries, that person who does work on behalf of others within the organization. I want to empower that person, which I'm calling member admin. Your verbiage might be different. Again, if you need individual help, please let us know. But I'm going to go into member admin here, and I'm going to go into my permissions area for relationships, because all of these are relationships fields. And then down here, you'll see a new section that wasn't there before, simply called terms. And you can choose what you want to turn on and what you don't, but I'm going to turn on terms. And if you do use that regions stuff that we were talking about, you'll also turn on regions in this next section. And then once you've done that and hit refresh, you should have on your left side the new terms functionality that you can go turn on. Another thing that you're going to want to do is going to manage fields. So again, settings configuration, system settings, manage fields. And because all of these terms things are dependent upon position, right? They're all part of position, and position is part of organization. They're organization subfields. So what you want to do is turn on terms, scenarios, and regions as you're going to use them. You might not need scenarios in your world. You might not need regions in your world. So turn on what you want and ensure that they're enabled on the types of records that you would be using them on. So as an example, I might not be tracking terms on instructors ever, or on guests ever, but I do need them on members. I do need them on staff, maybe not on exhibitors, right? And then if I want it to be available as a quick add, or even if I want to make it mandatory, just go through and make your selections here as to where terms needs to happen. What I mean by quick add, by the way, is when I went and created a new record and it was available there, that's because quick add is enabled. So again, a lot of flexibility and potentially some confusion and stuff here. So please don't be afraid to ask for help. If you need help configuring this stuff, then please let us know. There's a lot of flexibility in Engagify, and with flexibility comes complexity. And so we want to make that as easy as possible. Hopefully what I just went through made sense, but if you've got any questions about it, let's talk about it and let's help you get it set up. Let me look back at chat here real quickly here. So I see we can assign the term to a position. Was there any thought of assigning it to a tag? In our case, we have multiple positions, chair, vice chair, commissioner, that would need to be assigned, whereas a tag captures all those positions. What I might recommend is, though I don't love this, is a position that is sort of all encapsulating. If it's not important to you to have the granularity, but my expectation would be the chair, vice chair, and commissioner would be important, Eric. So that might be something we need to sit down and visit on and think through with you. But you could have a catch-all. No, knowing you guys the way I know you guys, you wouldn't want a catch-all. But no, we've never really considered it adding it to tags, partially for the reason that tags are very ethereal. If there's anything that can spiral out of control in any kind of database, it's tags. They're meant to be very transient, sort of unofficial methods of categorizing people. And so I probably wouldn't point us down a path of tags, but let's get together, Eric, and we'll talk about it, and I'll help you figure out the best way to leverage these new tools.
Ben, to clarify there, this is John from PSBA. To clarify there, isn't there ability to add multiple positions to a single term?
Absolutely. So, earlier we added a sheriff to a term, right? So we said that sheriff is now another position on top of the other positions that are already relevant. We added sheriff as another position relevant to this term. So if you've got someone who's a chair and a vice chair somehow or another, maybe that's two different organizations or departments or whatever, then you could, when you record those two different positions on their record, then they could both be mapped to terms. Thank you, John. Who else? A lot of folks here. Not as many questions as I thought we'd get. How does everyone feel? I'm looking at the poll results right now, and so far everyone said it's relevant. That's awesome. A couple of people want to, I guess one person said it wasn't relevant. That's interesting. I'd love to learn more about that. Helpful, miss anything? I'm sure that there's going to be some cool stuff in there to learn from. And I'd like to just open up to any other questions, folks, that you might have. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, which is unprecedented. But if there's any other questions or concerns or feedback you'd love to give, we'd love to.
Another one in the chat, Ben.
Will this allow you to pull a list of county commissioners by ending date of a term? For example, all commissioners who have a term. Yeah, totally. In fact, that's kind of what this is, right? So right now, I'll use your exact example. You said 2024. So here I've got a term that ends in 2024. And I know I've only got 6 people in it. I know you'd have hundreds or even thousands. But here I'm looking at all the people who are serving in this term. And to use your example, I want to find only people who are county commissioners. Now, I don't happen to have any county commissioners with the way my test data is set up. So if you'll bear with me, we're going to pretend by typing board member. Okay, so now here are the 2 people who are board members who have a term ending on this end date, December 31st, 2023, right? So just search by the name, or of course, I'm sorry, by the position, or you can filter by the positions, the relevant positions. You could filter by organization. You could go deeper and say, show me everyone who's appointed, who's got a term ending, everyone who's elected, you got a term ending. And then once you've got sort of the breakdown that you want, you can also export that to Excel if you want to do something else with it. Cool, good question. What other questions, folks?
Ben, I got a question.
Yeah.
So throughout the Engagify workspace, there's the ability to add custom fields to different entities, right?
Yeah.
Is that something that's going to be coming with terms, or is that something down the road?
Yeah, so to be clear, Terms is fully released in its current state. What you saw today is sort of the extent of what Terms is today. So no, I don't have custom fields yet on Terms. However, there are several objects, things within Engagify that we don't presently have the ability to create custom fields on like we can with people and organizations. But we've been getting the resounding feedback that we'd like to be able to add custom fields to everything. And so I've got that as a bit of general feedback that we're still scoping out strategy on, John, but down the road, I can totally see how you'd want to create and, curate and manage your own custom fields on Terms, but also on classes and on events and on saleable items and so forth, so on.
Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions? Shannon, Tiffany, Stephanie, Jacqueline, Kim? Cliff, I hope this was a good use of your time, bud.
Yes, for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Great. Well, everybody, with that, then I'm out of material unless you want to stick around for dad jokes. But otherwise, see, Monique instantly started shaking her head no. She knows how bad my jokes can get. Guys, thank you so much. We're really excited about this. Can't wait to see what all you do with it. And it's very new and it's pretty innovative. I can't think of a single competitor of ours who has anything even similar to this. So as you're using it, as you're experiencing it for the first time, please point out its advantages and its disadvantages. Where have we missed the mark? Where have we hit the mark? What's great? What sucks? We need to know it because it's never finished, right? We're always going to be working on Engagify and every feature in Engagify. We've done 95 releases in the last 12 months. And we're not slowing down a lot. So we're always iterating on this thing and always trying to improve it, always trying to learn from you guys. So you've heard me reference direct conversations with several of the clients represented in this meeting here today. And I want that to continue. We want to continue to learn from your everyday real world scenarios so that we can build real solutions that matter to real people. And as always, guys, you all are doing amazing work in support of our communities, our schools, our governments, And I just want to appreciate all the tireless work you do to make our country better, and tell you how honored we are to be a part of your missions. So it's always a pleasure to serve people who serve people. We really, really appreciate you guys.